how the pattern can, even if you do get the courage to leave, then the pattern can then just keep going with another person who's the same.
Yes, that is the case a lot of the time. I've been looking up some facts if you want to hear them.
Sure.
To start the show off. So, there is an organisation in the UK called Refuge for women that are experiencing domestic abuse. And on their website, they have the following figures. They're taken from an organisation called the Office for National Statistics, which is a government organisation. So, 2019, from a report called Homicide in England and Wales, year ending March 2018, from averages taken over a 10-year period, the Office for National Statistics reported that 2 women are killed every week by a current or former partner in England and Wales. Also, almost 1 in 3 women aged 16 to 59 will experience domestic abuse in her lifetime. This again is from the Office of National Statistics, from a report called Domestic Abuse in England and Wales Overview, November 2019. And in the year ending March 2019, 1.6 million women experienced domestic abuse. And that's from a report called Domestic Abuse Victim Characteristics. So, not a very good picture, as you can see.
No, that's awful. That's awful. I was thinking of my own life, with men, and it's weird how, if your relationships with men are a bit skew with, then it can, affect your life. It can affect your finances. I know single women that are successful, but also single women that, haven't, that are still in rented. I'm that way. And I think, if you marry and get a house and do all that, then you don't get stuck in that kind of rut, and then find yourself older and think, oh God, that's it for me. So I think, marriages and, it's odd how relationships can rebound over the rest of your life, and affect this and that,
Yes.
even something like finances.
The impact of domestic abuse, whether you're married or not, on your life is, I think, vastly underestimated. Because the emphasis tends to be, and quite understandably, on people who are being abused violently, although there is more emphasis on the emotional and coercive aspects of abuse at the moment, and not really on the long-term effects. I suppose the reason for that is needing to get to safety, because it's a pretty well-established fact amongst domestic abuse organisations that have existed for quite a long while now, that the most dangerous time for a woman who's in a domestic abuse relationship is when she's leaving and if she's pregnant. Those are the 2 times that you're most in danger of being killed or badly injured. I think the media reports, just in the newspapers, documentaries, on the news, on the TV, I think testify that is pretty much the case, sadly.
Yeah, I think I in my relationships, I don't get to the point where, times when I've left before, I've called the police and got them to help me. So that's how,
Very
gosh,
sensible.
yeah, but it's silly because it's like, what are the police going to be involved in every relationship? I remember with Ray, I was leaving him, got the police, and then the one after that, Steve, police were involved. I called them, he got really threatening, crazy threat. He got blind drunk, and started hacking at the front door with an axe and sort of splintered it. The neighbors were there, so I didn't have any choice. And then after that, police involved, with
Just to
Luke.
interrupt, that's quite a common tactic for perpetrators to get drunk as
Right.
an excuse for the behaviour.
Mm.
So either to get, but sometimes they'll just like only have, well, one drink, but they'll come back to where you live in and they'll act really drunk and use that as an excuse for assaulting you, or just like in your case, as you said, attacking the door with an axe. So that's a common tactic. But what you can say to that is, well, you didn't hit anybody else. You weren't that drunk that you just attacked a random stranger, and you didn't go and attack next door's front door with an axe. So, but I mean, that's horrible. That must have been really frightening.
Yeah, well, he lasted, I mean, I used to call the police. He used to get taken to court for breaches of the peace, and then I would be there in the court waiting for him
Yeah.
to take him out for the day. So that's how mad it was, turning up at the court and, oh, I'm here. I mean,
Yeah, but that's because a lot of what happens to victims of domestic abuse is the psychological effects of it, again, cannot be underestimated. It's because you're stuck in the cycle of abuse. And that's why a lot of women don't leave, is because they're stuck in the cycle of abuse. But just before I forget, just in case anybody's listening and they do want to leave and they're in the UK, on the Refuge website, they have got a section that help you called planning to leave that you can go on. And there's also some phone numbers that you can ring to talk to somebody about how to leave safely. And they'll talk you through it. And try and find you a place in a refuge as well, if possible.
lovely. Don't worry about that too much because I can put links below and stuff like that, and of course in the comment section below. What I want to talk about is why people stay in the cycle of abuse. Because I know a lot of people think that you just get ground down, blah de blah, and but often that's not the case.
Well, I think some of it is you don't realise what's happened to you.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got children and you're really busy trying to protect them. So sometimes it can be that bad that women will ignore their children just to keep sort of the wrath of the perpetrator at bay. But there is a list on the refuge site of barriers to leaving, and they range from safety. He's threatened to kill you. Might have threatened to kill the kids.
Yeah. But I wanted to, I know, I don't want people to turn off. I think people have short time span and they sort of listen, and if they're not getting what they want, they sort of turn off. So I don't want to be like an information thing where they can sort of get that if they use Google. I wanted to talk about, why and where and what's really going on, something that others don't give out.
Well, these are the reasons why. I mean, I wasn't going to go into detail. It's, a lack of self-confidence, denial, shame, guilt, financial dependence, loyalty. Could be your culture, could be your immigration status. There's a whole reasons why. But I mean, the psychological aspects of it, usually it seems to be that there's some kind of threat hanging over you, like, well, if you leave, I'll leave my job, you won't get a penny. I've heard that in my personal life about women that I've known. And then another one that I've heard, I know somebody really well, and her husband used to try and make her feel like she was really stupid, as in thick, not very intelligent.
Yeah, but
Because
isn't it, hang on a sec, isn't it women, I know in my case, speaking from personal experience, isn't it choosing abusers? Because like, there's men out there, they're abusive, and there's women that choose them, and there's women that don't choose them. Like when I moved to St. Margaret's Village, I noticed something about the women there. They had all married men that treated them amazingly, and they had the big house and the jewels. And I noticed something about those women that were different to other women. And I think other women choose abusers. I know from my personal experience, everyone I chose, they're all abusive, all of them.
I don't think it's so much that you choose. I think it's that you don't have the barriers up that you would have up if you knew what a healthy relationship was. When you go on domestic abuse recovery courses, they call it your shark cage, building up your shark cage. And most victims don't have a shark cage.
Can you explain what that is for the listeners and me?
So, especially if you've been in an abusive relationship previously, that makes you very, very vulnerable to ending up in another one if you haven't had some education about what's happened to you and some training or therapy to start to come to terms with it and manage it. So you can be made vulnerable to tolerating behaviour that you wouldn't normally tolerate. You might be just worn down or just brainwashed or to thinking that it's acceptable. It's quite complicated because this goes into people's cultural beliefs. A lot of it goes into beliefs about held by men and women about what is acceptable male behaviour. But if you've come from a family where there hasn't been essentially a healthy family dynamic, and you think that you just expect things to be bad, that can make you vulnerable and you don't have a shark cage. So if you imagine like you're out there, you're back out in the world of looking for a new relationship. If you're in your shark cage, you're watching the sharks circling around, but you can tell that it's dangerous, so you're not going to enter into that. But if you haven't, you're vulnerable for being picked off. So it's not necessarily that you're choosing, it's that you haven't got your barriers, you haven't got the understanding of what's happened to you before fully. That's not to denigrate anybody or say that they're being silly or they're just too stupid to understand. It doesn't mean like that, because when you're subjected to abuse, especially from a long period of time, it does affect you psychologically, and it affects your thinking, and it affects your confidence. It's basically just like you just get worn down by it, and you accept, you can convince yourself that you'll accept more and more, and especially if you've got these outside pressures that are listed, like the culture, or there might be just like social pressure. If you break that relationship in that family up, the social pressure you're going to get from other people. And of course, some people get threatened with violence by people's relatives and friends, perpetrators. So there's that.
So what about the shark cage? I didn't understand that. Does it mean you're in a shark cage?
Yeah, you're in the shark cage, but as you start to learn about, first of all, you need to learn what domestic abuse actually is and the different kinds of abusers, like the sexual controller and the dominator and the king of the castle, and there can be different names for different kinds of abusers. But I think most women find that their abusive partners are a combination of the different types. So the sexual controller would use sex more as a method of control and abuse. So they might rape you. You might get raped a lot by your husband or partner, and scuppering any contraception that you try and use, so you end up being pregnant, and then they say they're not going to support the baby, or they deny the baby's theirs. So it can be used that way, almost like a weapon against you. So if you're building up your shark cage, so first of all, learning what kinds of abuse are out there.
And sorry, so can we go through the different ones as the sexual, you called him the sexual abuser?
Yep.
Okay, next one.
So there's a sexual controller, rapes you, won't accept no for an answer, keeps you pregnant, or rejects your advances.
Right.
The king of the castle treats you as a servant slave, says women are for sex, cooking and housework, expects sex on demand and controls all the money. The bad father says you are a bad mother, turns the children against you, uses access to harass you, threatens to take the children away, persuades you to have his baby, then refuses to help and care for it. The liar denies any abuse, says it was only a slap, blames drink, drugs, stress, overwork, PTSD, you, and unemployment on his behaviour. The persuader threatens to hurt or kill you or the children, cries, says he loves you, threatens to kill himself, threatens to report you to social services, benefits agencies. The bully glares, shouts, smashes things, sulks. The jailer stops you from working and seeing friends, tells you what to wear, keeps you in the house, seduces your friends and family. The head worker puts you down, tells you that you're too fat, too thin, ugly, stupid and useless. So, when you start to recognise what you've experienced and then you start to process it.
Do you think that, sorry, what was the last one called after the jailer?
The head worker puts you
Oh, right.
down, tells you you're too fat, too thin, ugly, stupid, useless.
I recognise that one. Do you think that women have a certain one that they go to a lot, maybe?
I don't know. I think that's very difficult to say. I think most women experience a combination of these traits, but with some men, some traits are stronger than the other. So in my experience of being on domestic violence courses, I've heard quite a bit of things about the jailer, in the sense that the tactics that are used to keep women in the house or in a certain place where the perpetrator will know that she's there, like making sure that she's there because there has to be some, if it's a business, there has to be some parcels delivered, some important deliveries, so you have to be there. But it's a form of control. It sounds innocent and it sounds benign, but when that's done to you over and over again, as this woman reported to the group, then that's pretty.
So what is it? There's a book, isn't there? That's got
Yeah,
authors.
that's what I'm reading from. It's called Living with the Dominator, a book about the Freedom Programme by Pat Craven, who is an ex-probation officer. And she wrote this book. So if you want me to read this out quickly. So I will begin by offering a short history of the programme. Between 1986 and 1996, I worked as a probation officer. During that time, I worked with hundreds of violent men. For some of that time, I was a parole officer. Some of these men had committed murder and were released into the community under provision known then as life licence. Most of the murderers I met were men who had killed their female partners or former partners. I also acted as a chairwoman to the management committee of the local women's refuge and worked in the refuge itself during that decade. So she's seen both sides of the coin. She's seen the perpetrators and she's worked with the women, the victims. So the information that she gathered during that time was what the men said to her, the perpetrators said to her, and their like belief systems.
And
like
what kind of things did they say?
Well, they believe that she says in the book, she heard it quite a lot. They believe that if you find your wife or your partner in bed with another man, you have a right to kill her.
Right, but what other, I mean, I know that's an extreme. What other ways did they think? Just that women are there to serve them, or did they have anger issues to women?
Well, it's not so much anger issues. The conclusions that she came to is it's social attitudes that are ingrained in women. So in other words, it's how men are ingrained in men. So it's how women are brought up in our society. If we just look at our society, and the beliefs about women and how you act towards women that are ingrained in them by families, by peer groups, by media, by quite a lot of sources, really. So there's that, and then the point where it gets violent is as a method of control, but also if a man feels like he's losing control. And so, say if you start shouting back or you've had enough and you start like rebelling, then he's losing control, so he has to get you back under control. So he'll use various tactics to either intimidate you or undermine you, which are obvious forms of abuse.
And I think women can get abused in the workplace. As you were reading that out, I felt a lot of stuff come out, working in Fleet Street and the sort of,
yeah, of course, yeah. It's getting right down to the core of it. It's a bit like feminism 101, isn't it? It's men to some degree, I think, in the workplace, men resenting women having any power or being in roles that men don't feel you should be in that role. But it's strange because
it's interesting because I, got sort of booted out as soon as they got the phone hacking, and I think a lot of that was to do with I was a woman private detective. I was a woman. They wanted a man because they were men.
Yeah, it's having clear-cut ideas about what are women's roles and what are men's roles. But we still have the Equality Act in this country, which says quite clearly that, there needs to be equal opportunities for all kinds of people in the workplace, and that you can't legally go around doing that, discriminating on the basis of somebody's gender. So
yeah, they don't make it about that. I mean, like, I was asked to leave. Oh, we can't have private detectives walking around the office, but then they'd taken more care under a contract. So it's done pretty sneakily. It's not like overt. And there's plenty of uses to get rid of people.
Oh yeah. I doubt they'd make it blatant. I think the most stupidest people might make it blatant. But yeah, and then there's just misogyny, basic misogyny, hatred of women, fear and hatred of women. Which, I mean, you could go into reams of things there, couldn't you? Because I mean, all right, we've got the things we've got now. Women have got the things they've got now in society, and it's vastly different from what 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and it's been a long, hard fight. But how things were for women in the past, I mean, you couldn't even get a mortgage if you're a woman. It was ridiculous. You remember how things were, when you were a child and I was a child, and I was from a northern working class industrial town. But in a strange way, women still had a certain kind of power. It was just like a bit of a reversed power. It was like power
Aren't
of
they
mothers.
still kept down? I mean, as I remember going to the village where I went to, where it was very married, the women were very married. It was like going back to the 50s, and I was single, so my child was singled out for him to be left out of parties, for him to be left out of. So, isn't it? I know. Has it moved on? It hasn't really. It's like it seems so on the surface, but actually underneath it all, like, if you have a child, if you go to these areas, you're going to be in trouble. You
It's
can't go there as a career woman. They just don't like it.
Yeah, it sounds
So
like you were a threat to them,
I don't
and
know what it was,
they're a
but
cosy little arrangement, and you were a single woman, so therefore you might possibly have tempted one of the married husbands away. But I mean, that's a different set of circumstances where women will experience a different kind of oppression and restriction. But yeah, there are still these things going on because there wouldn't be two bloody women being killed a week. I mean, you've only got to look at the papers daily. I mean, what is there? What is it? I saw yesterday there was some guy that got off with strangling his wife, and they've been married, and he was late middle aged. They've been married for decades.
Mm. So there's the other way. I noticed when back in my 20s when I called the police on Steve that, you know, one time he was standing outside the flats and he'd smashed the door, the communal door, which obviously put me in bad stead with my neighbors, smashed my front door. And it was a nice little place. It was really quiet and countryside-ish and lovely wood around. And he'd done all that. And there we were waiting for the police to come. There he was, half drunk, and but he didn't need to be half drunk, but he was half drunk. And I said, "I'm going to get my ex onto you. I'm going to get Rhett." And he goes, "Who is he? Does he even exist?" And he said, "Why don't you and your friend go out for the evening? Pair of ugly old trolls. I mean," and I just lost my cool and I jumped on him. I leapt on him and bit his ear. And just as the police were coming
Oh
round the
God.
around the corner, I know. And she said to me, the female officer, that she's seen women like me before in prison, that I've got a bad temper, and if I insist on going out with men like that, I have to watch myself. Then I had an awful dream. I know. Then I had an awful dream one time that I'd murdered my ex and was in prison. And I felt that kind of, you know, when, as you know, I do see Luke, let's call him Luke now and again. And just, you know, because it's weird because I've read that book, How to Break Your Addiction to a Person, which is fantastic. I think it's by R. Halpern or something. And it's got the various ways that you're addicted. And it's got the various ways that the partner might control through weakness, control through power, and the ways that you're addictive. And one of them, I think, is called limerent and non-limerent. And limerent is the sexual, where you've got sex bound in, and love. I had that with Steve, that, you know, I thought I was in love with him. And then the idea of him going away made me think like the world had ended and I was like trapped in a little grey box. And I understand that very well, limerent attraction and addiction. But there's also the non-limerent, which, you know, I have for Luke, well, I'm trying to break it right now, is the, you know, it's not non-sexual, not in love, but where you keep seeing them, and they keep being abusive. And it's horrific to find yourself in that circle. But, you know, you say, oh, I'm not going to see, excuse me, I'm not going to see that person again. And then, you know, you find yourself seeing them and there they are, they get stuck in abusing you. And each time they do it, it drags you down and has a really bad effect as well on your subconscious and unconscious mind. And it's just so hard. And to find myself stuck in that, you know, pattern,
Yeah.
Paul.
I mean, but ideally, and logically, when you look at a situation, this is why people say, why doesn't she just leave?
Mm.
Well, it's obvious now there are reasons why women don't just leave. And again, that's misogynistic. That's like, oh, silly cow. Oh, she puts up with it. Oh, is she lying? You know, all the usual things that women get flung at them. If it was that simple, there wouldn't be bloody abuse going on and domestic violence. But it's not that simple. You get head workers, you know, you get them persuading you that, oh no, I won't do it again. Oh no, you know, and you're human, you're vulnerable, um, so you fall for it. But at least now, you know, there's more information out there, like I was saying, and you've got a better chance of getting away from relationships like that. And things have moved on into, even though this is still happening, so this is a reflection of men's attitudes. And I'm sorry, but most of the perpetrators are men, although I do recognise some perpetrators are women, and I do recognise this happens in gay relationships as well. But we're just looking at, you know, man-woman relationships for the
So
purposes of the show.
like the head workers, for example, I know with Luke, he would, you know, be very abusive to me, call me lots of names, tell me, you know, I'm a loser, and then sort of threaten to hit me and go to hit me. And I will say to myself, oh, never meeting with that individual again, as one does, you know, and I might be out in the middle of nowhere, you know, and have to get a train back and be shaking and scared. And then we'll turn around like, you know, a week later and be meeting up with the, you know, same person. And
Yeah,
if doing it affects your self-esteem because you know you're doing it.
yeah. I mean, my personal observations of women that have been in abusive relationships, the vast majority of them get to a certain point where they just can't tolerate anymore, and they leave, or they stop seeing the person. They put up with so much, and then they just reach this point where it's like a point of no return and there's no turning back. So if you just ignore that list of different reasons why somebody doesn't leave, if you leave that aside and just look at what's going on with you psychologically, like you've just described, so maybe that was to do with your self-esteem, and maybe it was to do with lack of support that you kept going back. It could be any reason, but that sounds like it's more to do with you. Now, again, like I said, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's not bad about you. And I mean, Pete, I couldn't believe it. Somebody actually said to me the other day, "Oh yeah, they look for abusive men, women." I said, "No, they don't. No, they don't look for abusive men. Why the hell, if after you've been through one abusive relationship, would you want to go through another one?" But
I think that. Sorry,
sorry,
carry on. Finish your point there.
well, what I was going to say is another thing that I've known, and this has happened in my own personal life, is if you have a physically violent relationship or marriage, then you're vulnerable to ending up in an emotionally abusive relationship or marriage. And this is what's happened with me, and it's happened with quite a lot of women. So you're on the lookout for the physical stuff, but your barriers are down about the emotional stuff. And of course you get gaslighted and you get undermined. So you don't know whether you're coming or going half the time. I mean, I have had it said to me that women who go through domestic abuse, it's the equivalent of being a victim of torture or a prisoner of war. It's the same psychological effects on you. Which sounds extreme, but actually it isn't. Not when something's being done year after year after year, for a long period of time.
So what do you think was the reasons why I tolerated Luke's, why go back? Why meet up with them again? And like, oh, hello. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? To find yourself doing it, it feels crazy. It does feel crazy. But I would still do it.
I don't know. That's only something you can answer yourself. Why do you think? Can you think of any reasons?
I don't know. I think it's kind of like, I mean, I'm very sensitive to people's energy, and I think it's like maybe switches personas, like completely switches personas. Like he will maybe ring and sound exactly like the friend I used to know. We were best friends for a long, long time, and he was a very good best friend. He understood me very profoundly, and then so he would talk to me like that in that persona, and I will be laughing, and then I will sort of like forget that other person because it does seem like a separate person, and then it will be weird. It will be so weird. It will be like he will say, well, come out with me, I'll take you somewhere, and as soon as I get in the car, the door closes. Suddenly I can smell it. It's like he will like be looking forward. He won't turn around, so I meet his eyes. I'll just see the back of his head, and I can literally smell that different persona to the point where I have sometimes just gotten straight back out of the car because I can feel it in me, like just like cold water going through me. I can feel it,
So
and I
it's
don't
switch
get.
personality.
But I mean, is that done? Is that done on purpose, or is it I'll get her in the car and then I'll be my real self? I don't know what is.
It sounds like he got you in a position where he had control over you. So you in his car, he was in the driving seat, literally.
Hmm.
And once he got you under control, then that was when he started to be horrible to you.
Yeah, but
Um,
no, it's not like, I mean,
Hello, Chris, are you still there? Oh no, not technological difficulties again.
oh, sorry. I
Ah,
can
right, there we go.
I can literally feel it. So he hasn't said anything at this point, but I can sense the presence of that other persona.
Yeah, I know what you're on about because my ex-husband, it was like being married to three people, and I never knew which one was going to come out on which day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's that. See, that in itself is very unsettling because there was three different versions of him. It was bizarre. I've never met anybody else like that. Utterly bizarre, and there was no rhyme or reason for it. At least with that partner, you knew when you got in certain. I'm not saying he made it better, but you got in certain situations with him, and then he switched. But I don't know what that is. It's. I mean, we could probably give it some esoteric reasons and occult reasons for it.
Go
Uh,
ahead. I mean, go ahead.
well, it's like there's more than one person in there. I'm not on about schizophrenia now. It sounds like they're hosting. I
Really?
felt like my ex was hosting for definite. I mean, he used to smoke tons and tons and tons of weed, and he always had done since he was about 15. Something happened in his life, and he never told me about it. It was some deep trauma. I'm damn sure of it. But he would never reveal it. It was like a deeply held secret kept way down. But I think as a result of this trauma, he self-medicated with a lot of weed, and of course that opened the door. Because in him, like you could see that in that partner, I could see the real him in him, and he was a nice person.
Yes.
He
Yes.
was, and he was really, and he once he stopped smoking weed for a while, and he was a different person. But it wasn't just the weed; it was something else as well. So it's like almost like he'd been taken over. I wouldn't say demonically possessed. I wouldn't go that far, but it was like he'd been taken over. But it was so weird.
Well,
You,
yeah, I found that with Luke, it's like weird. I mean, it's almost like I can feel the triggers as well. Like he came to my house one time, supposedly take my son out for the day, and he'd been rejected by a woman. He'd been to some Christian meeting, and some woman had rejected him. He was like in an odd mood. And I
mm,
felt a little bit, oh, is something, going to happen here? And then by the next morning, he stayed over. And then it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I merely went in the extension, just placed my hand on his shoulder and said, it's 1 o'clock now. And he went, get off my buck, like that. And just felt a dip in my stomach. And I thought, this is going to be bad. And, but then I sort of tried to said, do you want some breakfast? Made him breakfast, and that sort of creeping around somebody to try and bring the nicer side back. And then we
mm,
car, and as we were driving, I kind of started picking up this, like, it's almost like him being like rude and nasty, but there was a deeper thing, and I could feel almost this deeper kind of character coming out. And we stopped in a garage, and I brought him a donut and Coke, and I thought the sweetness will ground him, and it won't, this like other side won't come out. But he looked at me and he goes, no, I don't want any of that. And it was almost like he knew, you know, sort of like almost like unleashing it. And he kind of, and I thought this is going to be, this isn't going to be good. And we started driving somewhere, and I felt like he was deliberately getting lost and deliberately not finding the way to the um, fairground that we were going to. And I started to feel more and more fear. And then I got to the point where I just had to get out the car and took my son, and just we got the train back. And he sort of takes the mickey out of that. And I remember the time you got so paranoid, but it wasn't paranoid. It was literally, he had kind of, I don't know what it was, but it was something, and it just felt like almost like non-human, and it scared the shit out of me. And that was,
mm. Yeah, you did the right thing there. He
yeah,
sounds very manipulative.
really.
Yeah, he sounds manipulative, and that's another trait that you need to be on the alert for. I
In what
don't
way?
manipulation. You
In
know,
what way does he sound manipulative? What part of that?
well, d deliberately, what was it? Not losing the way or not going the right way. So he was manipulating your emotions.
Right.
He was trying to put fear in you, in other words, trying to unsettle you. That's manipulation. So because it sounds deliberate. So it wasn't like oh, I don't know where the hell I'm going. We're lost. Oh dear, what a chump I am, kind of thing, or whatever. Nah, he knew what he was doing. So but I had PTSD therapy this time last year, and the PTSD therapist, a bloke who was really good, he told me that my ex-husband's behaviour was due to the way he was brought up, because he did seem to mirror a lot of his parents' behaviour. They hated me, they really didn't like me. But he was very much like his mum, which I thought was a bit disturbing. So there was something weird going on. But this is what a PTSD therapy has said to me, because my marriages have left me with raging PTSD, which is fun. So that's one aspect to it, is parental influence. But I don't think that's the full story, if we're looking at it on the mundane level. But there just seems to be, at the moment, going back to the esoteric occult bit, it seems like a virus that's spread through men, because there's that many cases of men, attacking women, killing women, all kinds of really horrible situations that have ended up in the courts, and that you read about. And there just seems to have been an explosion of it.
I don't know that thing, the way he is. I mean, it's literally been going on now. I mean, it started off when I first met him that after he had a few drinks, he gets nasty. And then the time in my flat where he went to, have you got any food? He said. And I'm like, no, let's go out. I was in the bath. And he looked in my fridge and there was some fillet steak. Now, I bought the fillet steak just for me because I was low in iron. I didn't really want him to eat it because it's expensive, fillet steak. And he went, what's the matter with you? You're so greedy. I mean, oh God, it was my flat. I was giving him money. And he got a cup, smashed it in the sink, got one of the broken pieces, put it to my neck in the bath. And rather
because
than
of the steak.
Yep, because of the steak. I know.
What did he say to you when he held it against your neck? If it's not too traumatizing, sorry to
Something like greedy bitch, you're so selfish. Why couldn't I have that? Keep it for yourself. That's sort of a greedy bitch.
So there's several things there, isn't there? There's a sense of entitlement. That he should be able to have that. You've denied it to him. It's an extreme reaction. There's problems there for definite. That's an abnormal reaction to something. I mean, when you think about it, most people would think, oh, but then they might look in the fridge, see the steaks, and think, oh right, okay, and then they might make a joke of it and say, oh right, so you've got nothing, but you've got these bloody steaks, haven't you? And then you might say, well, there's a reason for that. It's because I'm low in iron, and it's actually almost like medicine, isn't it? All right, okay, yeah, I get you now. But no, with him, it's like from 0 to 60.
Yeah, he did that when I was pregnant as well. He was again around my house. He always has bed sits. I had my own house at that point, and I was pregnant. I think I was 7 months, quite well gone, and he started cooking like really late. And I don't know, I've got a thing about that, especially if it's people that've had a few drinks and they might leave a grill on or something. So I came downstairs. I said, "Oh, I'd rather you didn't cook bacon. It's 2 a.m." And his response was to smash the oven door and smashed it so hard that it shattered. The glass just went everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And I remember I fell to the floor and I just thought, I just don't want to feel the stress in my body because I don't want to lose the baby. And I thought, when somebody does something like that, you kind of think that there's going to be worse. You kind of think they've freaked out and they're going to keep freaking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like somebody who hasn't got any self-control.
Yeah.
And the minute they get frustrated, so he's got a thing about food then, hasn't he?
Well, he has,
It being
weirdly.
fed, and I wonder if that's a childhood thing or something.
Well, he went to his father's over Christmas, and he told the story of his father bought some cod for himself and was eating it, and there was nothing in the fridge for him. And he felt his father, who's about 70, should have brought him some cod. And then he said he started threatening his father, and then he sort of walked out. And he said to me as he was recounting the story, I nearly killed him. I nearly killed him. And I thought, wow.
Bloody hell, he sounds dangerous.
Yeah, I live in denial over that, and I think to myself, well, I'm not his girlfriend, therefore I won't trigger his anger. But his anger seems to me, he seems to get girlfriends, and the girlfriends he gets, he seems to like treat them like goddesses, and I've heard him speaking to them like really groveling around them in a weird way. It just doesn't even sound like him. And then he sort of has me as a sort of punch bag, and
Well, are you frightened of him?
when he's like that, yeah, when he's in his sort of like normal, I call it normal personality, but that's probably my denial. But when he's angry, yeah, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. He took me to that Sean Atwood interview, and I was nervous going there. Obviously you're nervous. I was going to talk about my life. I didn't know whether people might say, oh, arsehole or whatever. So I was like really nervous, and nervous about my appearance, everything, nervous about what I was going to say. He said he would take me, got in the car, and he knows I don't like going fast or motorways. He got straight on the motorway and said, look, I'll go really slow. It doesn't matter, but I'm nervous on motorways anyway. And then he lost his way, managed to lose his way. So we were going round and round. So we were like an hour late, and we were going round and round in a circle. And I noticed signs, and I said, look, there's a sign there. We need to go that way, not just follow the satellite. And he went, do you mind telling me what to do? Shut up and sit back, like that. And I sat back and I thought, well, I won't say anything. And he just kept on then after that. It's your fault. And just raging at me. And the raging got really high. I started to get really scared, and
Yeah.
got to Sean Atwood's place, got out of the car. He got out really quickly, came round to the passenger side and squared up to me. I'm very manly, squaring up to a woman, squared up to me, like boxers do. And I said, sorry, 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 like that. But I hadn't done anything apart
Yeah.
from be scared that I wasn't going to get there on time. I was an hour late, and we had left I mean, it's not that far away. And then I went down, hid down an alleyway, and Sean turned up, and oh, there you are. I was crouched behind a bush. And how did I go in there? How was I feeling, going in to do a bloody interview with someone after that experience? I mean, my nerves were shot.
I mean, that behaviour is completely unacceptable. You could go to the police about that. That's completely unacceptable, and really, you just shouldn't have anything to do with him anymore because it's danger of escalation. And then if he escalates, God knows what might happen.
Well,
He's out of control, and to be quite honest, he needs psychiatric help by the sound of it.
yeah, it wasn't helped by the fact he met this girl and said he fell in love with her, and this girl was looking at my blogs, which was weird. And then there was a blog that I wrote about Steve, the guy I went out with in Brighton, I was
Yeah,
actually in love with, and she said that it was him. And oh, I don't want to go out with you anymore. That's the story of you. And now his hate thing, his excuse for hating on me is, you ruined the relationship with the only girl I ever loved.
which will be rubbish. He's never going to have a successful relationship,
No.
because of the way he is. So really, you should cut all contact with him. And or are you too scared to cut contact with him? Do you think there'd be comeback on that?
There probably would be him trying to cause trouble in my life. I don't think he'd come round to where I live and stuff like that. No, so not scared physically in that way. Scared of myself, I suppose, that comes on the phone and does a little boy bit and is the same person, because the abusive person is different. Now, as you know, I'm sort of an empath, whatever, so I can really feel it. I can feel the energy, and it's so different from the abusive personality. It almost makes you think that it's a different person, completely.
Yeah, well, it kind of is in a way, but I think you need to learn some assertiveness skills because the it's not that you're letting him get away with it. I understand why you're acting the way you're acting, but really needs you should you should say to him that behaviour the other day was unacceptable. You physically threatened me. You shouted at me. You were very aggressive. It was unsafe while you were driving. I felt unsafe. I felt in danger. I really don't want to have anything else to do with you because I feel like that you might hurt me physically. And just lay your cards on the table. And if he gets abusive or if he gets angry or he threatens you, just say, if you continue to talk to me like this, I will contact the police. And that'll probably, it sounds like he's got a low tolerance for frustration in any form, which is quite common with people like that. So, yeah, it's a matter of self. I mean, really, you've got a responsibility here to protect yourself. You can't keep putting yourself in this situation, knowing what he's like and knowing what you're risking, because his relationships with women are never going to be successful because of the way he is, and he'll keep blaming you and find a reason to blame you. And, it's just not good. So, I know it's hard, but really, why are you allowing yourself to be treated like this? You're worth so much more than this. Nobody should allow themselves to be treated like this.
Yeah,
Every now and again, people get stressed, people are under pressure, exceptional things happen, like somebody might have passed away, or, there are certain very, very small circumstances where people might act out but it's out of character, it's under extreme pressure. But you've known his behavior has been like this for years consistently.
it has been consistent. Yeah, it's got worse. And ironically, interestingly, he has an ex-girlfriend that I speak to, that I did speak to. She shouldn't speak to me anymore, and it was because of I got her some work through someone I know, and that didn't work out, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but we used to speak and have the same reaction to him. Like, she would go a lot. He would sort of, make her feel sorry for him. She would go and collect him from somewhere, and he would be very aggressive. And then she would say, well, I'm not going to see him again. Go home and eat sweets. And which is weird because after seeing him, I would crave sweet things as well. I said, wow, it's unbelievable. I go home and like really mong out on, and I'm talking like a massive bar of after I've seen him. It's weird. It's like I can't get it in me fast enough. And she was doing the same thing. I don't know what that's all about. But she has the same thing that, and I'm wondering, this personality twisting, this what's it all about? Because I remember the guy I was dating in Northern Ireland. He had that same kind of thing. And one day we were supposed to go to Dundalk, stay in a hotel, like, weekend away. And I felt that he was going to be in bad temper for some reason. I think I'd gone to a party he didn't want me to go to. And I said to him, you still annoyed about that? It was a party of old people next door. And I felt obliged to go in, and have a glass of sherry. And he didn't want me to go. And I rang him when I came out and said, I'm out now, and all this kind of stuff. But I knew he was a little bit annoyed. So I was talking to him, said, you okay about that? And he was like, yeah, no, I'm fine. And he was that, as I call it, the normal him. But I had a gut feeling, or maybe it was my head telling me, no, don't go, don't go, don't go. But I spoke to him. He seemed fine. And I thought, had a little chat with myself. Don't be silly. He's fine. Packed my overnight thing, got on the coach from Belfast to go to Tyrone. It was about 2 hours on there. And as I was on there, I was literally, every bone in my body was screaming at me to get off. And so when I was feeling that, I rang him. I said, "You okay? You're not in a bad mood or anything, are you?" And he was like, "No, and I'm fine, pet," and all this kind of stuff. So I thought, "Oh, come on, Christine, don't be silly." Carried on, got off the coach, got into his car. He was right. He hugged me and everything, met me off the coach. And I thought, "Oh, there, I'm being so silly." Walked back to the car. As soon as he got in the car, he actually locked the locks, and then out came that person. I just felt like absolute terror. And he was driving, and I kept looking at him, saying, "You okay?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But he was looking ahead of himself, and he wouldn't turn and face me. And it was like something about him. I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna have to get out of here." It was terrifying. So we drove for about an hour, and I said, "I want to go to the toilet," and went in a pub and said to the people in there, it was like a hotel. I said, "My boyfriend's in the car. I think he's going to be violent, really violent with me. Can you call me a taxi?" Called the taxi, crouched down in the taxi, and went back home. It cost bloody about it cost 60, 70 quid for me to get back home in this taxi, but I was terrified. I was literally terrified. And I don't spook easily. As you know, I'd been down to Dundalk to interview the IRS. So I don't spook easily. I was terrified. And it was just something about him, and I'd felt that warning even before I'd gone. Um, and yet when I spoke to him, that energy wasn't there. But as soon as I got in that car, there it was. It's like it came out. I don't know what that is. I don't know if other people have experienced it, but it's kind of similar to Luke. This sort of similar thing. Once you get in a position where they know you can't get away, it's like they sort of unleash it or they let it show. I don't know
They've
what
got
it is.
control of you and they know there's nothing you can do. That's why he locked the car doors. But what do you think he might have done? Do you think he was planning on beating you or something like that? To teach you a lesson kind of thing?
I don't know, but he had punched me before, and it was one time again. I got the coach because I lived far away from him. Got the coach, got off the coach, and my friend rang me, and so I could literally see him in the car. Picked up my mobile and I said, "Oh, sorry, I can't talk now. I'm just meeting, my partner," and she said, "Oh, da 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 da," and it was literally for a few minutes. I put my finger up to him as if, "Hang on," like that, as you do with people. And I was literally 1 minute because I said to her, "I've got to go. Someone's waiting for me." And as I was saying this to her, I was just going to him, "Hang on," like that, and walked towards the car, got in the car, and just he got his fist and he went bang on the side of my leg really hard, give me a dead leg. And then he skidded off in the car.
For keeping him waiting.
Yep. And literally, I'm telling you, it was 1 minute. 1 minute. I didn't have a conversation with her. It was
So you
1 minute.
prioritised somebody else over him and he didn't like it, basically.
Yeah, I was horrified. I don't know. I was trying not to cry, and we went and sat and had dinner. I was trying to, like, there I was in the middle of Irish countryside with someone who'd just done that to me. It felt really weird. I felt scared, and so I was trying to, like, deny it to myself. And then he was sitting there over dinner saying like weird things. He said, "Oh, you've been hit by men before, haven't you?" I think he was trying to, I don't know, like find out if I was going to stay with him or
That's
whatever.
an odd question.
Yeah, it was an odd question. And I
That's a
said, "What do you
very odd
mean?" And
question.
yeah, and he pointed to the scar on my nose. I've got a scar across my nose. And it was where a boyfriend, when I was like 18, he got a knife and he was waving the knife in my face, saying, "Kill the witch, kill the witch." And he slashed me with a knife. So I've got a scar there. And he sort of homed in on that. He said, you've been hit by men before, haven't you?" And I said, "Well, not really." And he goes, "Well, what's that scar then?" It's weird that could have been anything, couldn't it? And I said, "Well, yeah,
Because
actually."
they sense it. They can sense it. And that's why they home in on your vulnerability. It's like I think I said to you recently, there's a reason why so many empathic women end up with narcissistic sociopathic abusers because they like you can sense things about you sense that situation was dangerous and not unveiled and all the rest of it. Well, subconsciously or consciously or not, these narcissistic sociopaths do seem like predators, and they are looking for empaths. And they seem to, and it seems like a search and destroy mission. You know, they want to destroy you because you're empathic.
Really? Why
Yeah,
would
well, yeah.
why
So, well,
want
because you think about the good that you're going to do in the world if you're empathic, if you can empathize with people, and so you can be a support to people, you can do good in the world, you can, for want of a better term, you know, you're a positive force in the world. And so it's almost like these men have been programmed with like a software program to look for, often it is women, look for women like that, dupe them into the relationship. They do that by being Mr. Nice Guy and all the rest of it. I know because it's happened to me. And then that's it, and then the switch happens, like we well know. But it's really odd that it's often empathic women. So
mm,
they're not going for women that are feisty and might tell them to F off the
mm,
minute they get any trouble off them.
mm.
They're not going for women like that. You know, often it seems like I don't know if it's dreadful to say this, but it's the truth. In my personal experience, anyway, I've noticed that women who were quite dominant seem to be with sort of beta male type men. You know, in the context of what we're talking about, I sound like I'm being hypocritical because we're wanting men to change the way they are. But at the same time, you do get these women that I think they're bordering on abusive towards the men that they're with, because the men are sort of really two steps behind them and sort of really
I found that in St Margaret's, the women
did
there,
you?
yeah. They were good looking women, I have to say. They're very dominant. They really were. And they when I first met them, I thought, wow, they're so impressive. You know, they really were impressive women. And I thought their husbands must be like amazing. And I just was like, you know, dying to see their husbands. And then when I saw them, I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. They were not equal in attractiveness to them, not equal to them in personality, clout, charisma, none of it. And they were cucked. But I tell you one thing they were good at earning, they were good providers, but they were cut to hell. There's no way that those women were having a satisfactory sexual relationship with them. They couldn't have, they just couldn't have. They weren't their equals, you see.
Right. So that was the dynamic. So they were with weaker men, but who had lots of money.
Yeah.
But you think they were all having affairs?
I don't know. I actually don't think they were having affairs. I don't think they were. I really don't think they were. But yeah, I suppose well, maybe they'd just given up on sex. I don't know. I didn't get as close probably that I should have done. But I think they were unhappy. But definitely their men weren't their matches. No way.
Right. That's weird though. It's a collective group, and
Yeah,
they're all.
it was all in an area. You see, it's a well-to-do area with a nice little school, and they kind of what they do, people like couples like that, they're canny when it comes to money. Even though they've got a lot of money, they're canny with money, and so or clever, you know. So what they did, what an estate agent told me, especially that area, St Margaret's, because there's a school there that's supposedly the best in the UK. They sell up their houses like in Battersea, Chelsea, and they move there for the kids growing up, and then they'll move away after. So you've got certain, you know, certain couples, certain type of couples, and you know they were very sort of forging ahead, you know, forging ahead type people. They weren't, you know,
Yeah.
successful, and they did band together. You know, the women would go out, and I was invited along until they realized that I was single, and then they sort of quietly, softly, sort of push you to one side.
Well,
Yeah.
that happens a lot with widows, isn't it? Widows are like a dangerous thing.
Yeah, I think it is to do. Yeah, at the time, because of my low self-esteem, I did it, but at the time I did look good. So I think, yeah, it probably is to do with but who would worry about those guys? I mean, God, I just couldn't believe it when I saw them, I couldn't believe it. These, amazing women bitches though. I mean, they were bitchy. They were very into, they'd have a party and they'd be okay with leaving out one or two kids, or even one kid. And, because of, socially this or socially that, or it wasn't good for them, or they'd cherry pick kids. They'd invite that kid from a different class if they had a huge house, that kind of social
Sounds like
climbing.
Katie Hopkins mentality.
Very much so, but it was in a nasty way. It was particularly nasty, and so yeah, so that went on with the beta. I mean, but I don't think alpha men are. I mean, there's probably a shortage of alpha men, but I don't
I,
think
I
alpha men.
haven't really met any. Where are they? Hiding somewhere? Because I've hardly ever met any.
Well, I thought I met some on Fleet Street, like Greg
Mm,
Miskew, or but actually, come to think of it, they were beta men and they were cuckmen and they were bullies. They
yeah,
were
yeah.
there any. I mean, Alex Marinchek, I suppose, the nearest to an alpha man. He was. He's kept out of this all this bone hacking stuff, but he was an alpha man. He was lovely to go out with, and treat you really nicely, and make sure you're comfortable, and make sure you get little treats to eat, and yeah. But that's the only one I can remember in my entire life.
Oh dear. Wow.
Interesting get back to, I mean, how many other women are having this problem? You said you had it with your husband about these altars. I mean, because I think it does make you sort of go back to them, doesn't it? Because you think, oh, that's not the real them. Oh, that won't come out. And actually, there is sometimes ways like with Luke, and I can see, it's a sunny day. He might be dating again and in love. And I can think to myself, well, that side won't come out. And I'll be right about that. There's no stresses on him, and so that side won't be there. But there's other occasions where, of course, I can't judge that, and out that comes. And it's usually when, he's round my house and I can't sort of get rid of him, or, a position where I can't sort of walk away. And I wonder how many other women are living with men that have got like alters.
Yes, I wonder it'd be interesting if we could get some listener reaction. I mean, the thing with my ex, there was no rhyme or reason. That was the basic problem.
What?
You never knew. There was no rhyme or reason for him switching all the time. Because there used to be the nice version, the nasty version, and the horrible version, and there was no reason. It would just be like that's the way it would be.
And
Um,
it's horrible, isn't it, to sort of wake up one morning and think you're going to see, that your friend, your warm friend, and then be faced with a stranger in the same body. It's quite horrific, isn't it?
well, it is because we were so happy at the beginning when we were first together, and that was genuine. And then he changed, and
And I wonder,
I don't really know why. I know that sounds stupid, but I don't really know why. But I've had this, I've been telling you, I've had this a lot in my life, so it's really,
you've had it. Oh, with people turning.
yeah, switching on me.
Yeah. I've had that. I was talking to Sean, the one, the friend. He's gone on basis now. We had him on the show.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. I watched his basis interview.
It's nice, lad. We were talking, and he said write out a life story, and I was writing it, and I had that in relationships. That same thing where one minute someone's a friend, and next minute they're not. It's almost like some seed has been planted in their head that you're a bad person or something, and though you've done nothing, they sort of like turn away from you
Yeah,
and thought, hmm.
yeah. I mean, it's just, but and it comes out of the blue as well.
Yeah,
It just comes from nowhere. That's the other thing. So it's maximum unsettlement for you and shock and trauma and all the rest of it.
shocks. And of course, it affects your other relationships because you're having a relationship and you think, when's their alter personality going to come out? And it makes you not trust people.
Oh yeah, I can't trust anybody after
Yeah.
what's happened in my life. But then you can't really tell people about it because it just sounds so bizarre.
Yeah,
And
it makes you sound. Paranoid.
Right. Yeah, because it sounds like you must be hiding something that you've done for them to do that.
Mm.
But it happened with shortly after everything ended with my second husband. I couldn't believe this happened. Well, in a way I could, but it happened with my best friend of about 35 years.
Mm.
I'd stayed with her for a week. We'd had an absolutely brilliant time together. Not a cloud in the sky, and then all of a sudden she just dropped this thing on me, and she just changed. She just changed. It was so odd, and basically our friendship of 35 years ended there, and she did not care. And I was sat outside her house crying, and she didn't care. How can you go from having a really good time together, everything being normal, to that in the space of a few hours? How? It
Mm.
doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Do you
It
know what I
is
mean?
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get what these altars are, and whether people, that people that have them, whether they know they're being affected or whether they just feel like they're their normal selves or what.
So you think this is part of being a targeted individual? Do you know, I'm thinking, I've considered, is the current state of affairs with domestic abuse a form of being a targeted individual, but like a war on women kind of thing, a weapon in the war on women? Um, I know that sounds really generalized, but I'm curious about that because it's so destructive. Um, Even though you can recover and you can get over things and stuff and get your life back, it's such a destructive force. So if somebody had it in for women, one way to do it would be to like weaponize men against them. But I'm wondering if it is like to do with targeting or something, because it does not make sense what's happened.
Well, I think that I think don't have that. I mean, I was watching that Outlander series on Amazon, that one about a love that, across time. And it's like, I think we're all supposed to be having like deep loves. And I think at the moment we haven't got that really. Maybe because men are under attack by entities and women are
Yeah.
sort of in the brunt of it. And so there's no love between men and women anymore. And, you kind of watch programs like that and you think, wow, I'm just waiting for the guy to like turn nasty on her and maybe hit her a slap, because it's like unbelievable. And I remember when I was little, certainly in my 20s, I believed in that true soulmate love and, that kind of devotion. But now I just think that well doesn't exist, which is sad, really. And I feel like I've waited for it and, like being disappointed. And sometimes I think, the women in St. Margaret's did the right thing by just getting, somebody weak that they don't really love, but who
It'll just, yeah.
support them rather than try and fail. And I think, isn't it a sad world then if love doesn't exist? Because surely God made us that he wanted us to be experiencing love between each other. And it just doesn't seem, I mean, even on that Outlander, she came back, she met this guy in a different time, which says a lot, really. It was a man from a different era. And then she came back and had a lukewarm fake marriage with her husband in sort of present time or modern time. And that was very popular with people. They were really hooked in by the love story.
It was a female sex cult at one point. I've got a friend who was obsessed. I mean, obsessed with Outlander,
Really?
and she wasn't alone. So she used to force me to watch it when I went round her house. She was part of this army. I think it's died down now. Of these, it was a female historical sex cult, from what I could gather, because it's quite saucy, isn't it? Parts of it,
Yeah.
and I thought, this is like Mills. This is like a visual Mills and Boone for women, but in a historical context. But yeah,
Yes.
there was this crazy cult of women, and they were obsessed. They were that obsessed that stone circle that she steps into and she gets whisked back in time to the Jacobites, whatever, is real. And because the sex cult women used to go on these like vigils up to Scotland and go to all these places, and it's bizarre.
Go. That sounds awesome.
No,
I'm
but
obsessed with it too.
They went to the stone circle.
Oh my God!
And decided there were so many of them. They sort of all linked hands, and decided they were going to like try and manifest. What's the Jacobite hero guy called? I can't remember.
Jamie.
Yeah, manifest him in the middle of, and they managed to damage this bloody stone circle. I don't know how they did it, but that was. I mean, it was mental. These women were off their tits. I mean,
I really relate to that. I've been looking it up online and planning my visit. You're kidding me.
No. Oh God, you're another victim, are you? I thought this had all gone away.
Oh, no. They're playing it again on Amazon Prime.
Oh, here we go. Oh, but my friend, she was just like, obsessed.
I'm obsessed. You know why? It's because well, why is it? Why do you think it is?
I've got a bleeding clue. I thought this is weird, but there was the Facebook groups with thousands of women in them, and they were all having these trips up to Scotland. And oh God, if you got a chance to meet with the guy that played the Jamie guy, whatever, oh my God, it was like meeting Elvis or Jesus or something. But it was, and that was, and the other scandal was the Culloden battlefield.
Yeah,
a lot of Jacobites were killed by the British Army. That had been defaced by members of the Outlander cult. I think there's a few graves or there's some commemoration stones or something. They were getting these little mini things that you could get of that Jamie and putting Outlander character things on the gravestones. And people, for God's sake, what the hell?
Well, I didn't know all this.
Oh yes, it was that. This was about 3 years ago when it was at the height of the cult. Yeah, I honestly think if that Jamie guy had said, "Go out and kill for me," they would have. It would have been like the bloody Manson family, but the Outlander version. You'd have all these women that were just it was utterly bizarre. If that was some kind of experiment, Tavistock type experiment, it bloody worked, because I tell you. But whoever was behind that Outlander, they must be lying in the sun in an exotic part of the world now, counting their money.
Diana Galbadon, she's called.
Oh yes, I think she wrote three. I think there's 3 books.
I've got the book. I mean, I've got the book. I'm watching the series. I've got the book. I've got the poster. I've got my ticket to Scotland. Did you not know on my Facebook I posted?
No, I haven't looked at Facebook recently. Oh my God!
I've been posting about the stones and their power and how to get to this other dimension. Yeah.
Great.
But what I think what that is, I was watching it, I was watching the sexy, they're good. Well, they're not that good. I think there's a good sex scene in Atonement where they have sex in the library. So I think it's a bit kind of, the first one in series 1, it was really good. I'm on series 3, they're a little bit watered down.
So you had sex in the library?
Oh, in the film Atonement, Keira Knightley and the other guy. Soulmate sex. It's quite, I mean, Wuthering Heights was soulmates, and soulmate love is quite interesting. And I think we're sold it when we're younger. And I think it's interesting. I think sometimes abusive men know that, and they can play the part of kind of, that kind of character and sort of
syndrome, I call it.
Yeah, and they plug into you, and they can, mimic that sort of Jamie, character, which is all very, romantic and all that stuff. I mean, I remember Luke saying to me when we were dating, it was pouring with rain, he was standing there and he went, "Do you love me?" And sort of all sad. And I thought, are you trying to sort of make like a movie, like, Breakfast at Tiffany or something? That sort of they grab the sense of drama, the sense of moment and all this kind of stuff. So it's like a Mills and Boone, because they've been watching that kind of stuff. And I think women are maybe programmed to think, we all
Yeah.
at Disney, that our savior will come. And I remember reading, I remember talking to a guy who was asking me to go out with him. And I said, no, I don't really feel that much for you. I'm waiting for this kind of love. And then I want to write a book about it. And, I really believe that it would come. And here I am now, like a lot older, and thinking, is it going to come? Obviously it's not, and it's bad really for those that have sucked it up. I suppose not bad for the women in St Margaret's who have got the beta husbands and have realized it's a load of rubbish. They've ended up in a mansion at least, and they can watch their Outlander on a nice settee, whereas the rest of us are watching Outlander on, a secondhand settee in a rented hovel. So it's like different, but I none of us, none of us
Sorry.
none of us have got, what we want, a Jamie, a character. And I think, that kind of, one love, and one woman, and sort of being like, masculine and feminine at the same time, and, a really good-hearted man that you have a deep, deep, deep connection with, and a deep plugged in, he
Mm-hmm.
was really plugged into her. She wasn't really, she kind of was, but it was more his little plugs going out to her, and sort of, really feeding her everything she wanted, and being like a dream man.
Mm. Yes, I read a book about this once. It was called Prince Charming Syndrome or something. And it was
Um,
basically, and it was written by a blog, and it was basically women are brainwashed into thinking, and I think this is probably still the case. Women are brainwashed into waiting for their prince to come to save them and make everything in their life right.
yeah,
And when you think about it, we do, don't we?
we do.
We don't think, get your ass to university or whatever, or get on that training course, or learn that skill, or go
Yeah.
out, work hard like men do,
Mm.
save, blah, 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 do all that. No, we don't. We think, oh, yes, he's going to come along, swoon, blah, blah, blah. Um, yeah, I mean, all right, you have babies, and it's a bit hard for you to sort of do everything on your own if you have a baby, maybe. Physically, when you first like you've given birth and you need help and you need support, and it's whatever. But um, generally, I mean, we don't have to rely on men anymore for things. Especially, I think even more into the future, like there's going to be robots to do a lot of things, isn't there? I
Mhm.
know it sounds mental, but it's going to be true.
But I
So,
I entered, I did go to university just for a year, but I entered that, the career world, like the news of the world, with pretty male dominated. It was really male dominated, and they sort of, kicked me out with the phone hacking, and also Private Detective is super male as well. So I think you get men that club together in these little workplaces, and they keep women down there. You can be a certain person, well, you get Rebecca Brooks that's risen really high, but she's mentored, isn't she? She's mentored by Rupert Murdoch himself. So unless you're looked after, you're under the wings of a man, you really do get, squished and kicked in the ass. And I mean, they as soon as they got John Boyle, they wanted rid of me, and it crashed after. So ha ha ha. But that can, that can happen as well. That war of men and women in the workplace.
yeah, I mean, I often wondered about that about Rebecca Brooks. What's her secret? How come she's got to where she is? I
Well,
thought there must be something going on there.
yeah.
Not in a sexist sense, in the sense that, like you said, it's so male dominated and everything. But I'll tell you a funny story. Where I'm from, it's very working class, shipbuilding and all that. And there was a working men's club in a certain part of the town that wouldn't allow women at the bar. to go to the bar to order drinks. Women weren't allowed to go to the bar. So I was outraged at this when I was younger. And with my first husband, to his credit, we sort of did a guerrilla action on it, and we chained the doors up and put a note through and said, you better stop this because we're not having it. This is the 20th century, and this is ridiculous, not letting women get served at the bar. It's sexist discrimination, blah blah blah. My first husband worked for Greenpeace, so he knew all about press embargoes and doing press releases. And he did like this press release, and we put that in the through the letterbox of the local newspaper, and it was on the front page of the newspaper the next day. And it started off this raging thing, and there were people writing letters to the newspaper saying the reasons why women weren't allowed at the bar. Now, the reasons why were because they might make men have affairs. That was one of the reasons. They might get in the way of men trying to relax and have a good time. But ultimately, we changed it, and they stopped having that rule. And we did it, and women were allowed to go at the bar. And my first husband helped me with that because he was equally as outraged. So that's like an example of men clubbing together, and that was the only place in where I'm from, because there's plenty of working men clubs, and they didn't have that rule. Women could go at the bar and order drinks, but at that place, women weren't allowed at the bar at all, which is beyond the pale. So yeah, we changed that. Well, that was the clubby man thing, and that when you describe things like when you're at the news, it reminds me of that. Oh, we've got our little lads thing going here. We don't really want women coming and spoiling it. They might distract us with their boobs or something. Or
Yeah, even there was a reporter came and Greg sort of, started dating her, and then she got pregnant, and then there she was, sitting next to him pregnant, and that looked really weird. I mean, it really did.
yeah, yeah. It's like when workplaces used to have pictures of topless women and things like that. I think that's probably illegal now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And quite rightly so, actually, because that does thing with objectify women. And in the context of how women's lives have been in the past, that's totally unacceptable. So, but I'm just, thinking about the future. Excuse me. It's like I heard something, some young lass in Bristol talking about, this is on the radio. She was talking about where I think she owned a business or she worked for some organisation. It was really sort of like a go-ahead modern organisation, and they had a menstrual room or something, or a room where women on the period could relax if they were having a bad period. And she was saying, well, this is the situation, and we're responding to the needs of our employees, whatever. And some people were really upset by that. They thought it was outrageous. And I thought, why?
Oh,
Why is it outrageous? I mean, bloody hell, it's only recently, what is it, VAT's been taken off sanitary ware, and we can get it free in a lot of places. That should have been happening decades ago. So it's like it's a bit like women getting power and men losing control of. It comes down a lot to women's bodies, doesn't it? Because a lot I've noticed. Well, I did a thing about it when I was at uni, a dissertation about violent women in text and film, I called it. I won't go into loads of boring details, but anyway, I had to study Foucault, and Foucault had this theory about the human body. And basically, what it boiled down to is the more oppressed you are, the more your body gets exploited. So for women, that would be sex work, prostitution, having babies for people, your body being violated, all kinds of things. And you could use the example of like black men, their bodies have been exploited in the past for like sports, you know, and things like that, because they haven't had other outlets to like press, you know, go ahead and end up on Wall Street or whatever. I mean, I know some of that is class and wealth, and there's a lot more to it. But do you get what I'm getting at? So
Yeah.
So the root of a lot of oppression, the tool it's done through is your actual physical body. So when it comes to things like menstruation and pregnancy and babies, I mean, it's the trans thing that's going on now, where women are just being wiped out, their identity is being wiped out, the language war that's going on. That's a contemporary example of another form of oppression coming from men, essentially, but colonizing women's bodies. So yeah, that's so so domestic abuse thing is like an aspect of that, really, because when you think about it, it could be completely the other way. It could be that it would be absolute an abomination if a man hit a woman or even touched a woman that he wasn't really, you know, or never mind pushed them or whatever, and that society, I mean, in theory society does feel like this, but in practice what we're seeing isn't happening, and the people would be in agreement that they should go to prison for a very long time. There should be sanctions, fines. They would be in society. They would be shunned. You know, there would be absolute demonized. So it could go the other way, you know, and women would be protected more. And then in theory they are protected by the law, but and the law is being applied, but then the amount of times you read in the again newspaper articles about women who've had stalkers or women that then you would either you know, men would either try and kill them or kill their children or whatever, and the men were still allowed access through the family courts, and the men went on to kill the children. Or women that have had stalkers and they've gone to the police and said, look, I'm really worried, I think he's going to really hurt me, and the police haven't helped, and then they've ended up, you know, and it's absolute, and that's why we've got Clare's Law now, because of what happened to a lady called Claire in Blackpool.
Oh, right. What happened? I didn't hear that.
Well, I think it was an ex-boyfriend, and he was still stalking her and harassing her. She ended the relationship, and she tried to get the police to take notice, and I don't think they really helped that much. And she was a nurse, I think, at the hospital in Blackpool, and he waited for her when she was coming back to her car after finishing a shift at night and killed her, murdered her. So Clare's Law, very briefly, is you have the right now under the law to either ask for yourself or on behalf of a friend or a family member. You can go to the police and you can say, I have a new partner, or my sister's got a new partner, my friend's got a new partner. I'm concerned. Could you please do a check to see if he's got previous for any violence or domestic abuse? It doesn't mean that they will necessarily automatically do it. It has to be like considered. But if they agree to do it, then they do the check. I think it takes about 4 weeks or something. But when they find out any results, they speak to the person in the relationship. They won't tell you. They'll only tell you if you are doing it on behalf of somebody who is in somewhere very vulnerable. So you have a fighting chance now of knowing if you are getting, like you said, getting challenged into a relationship with somebody who might potentially be a threat to you and a threat to your life. So that's why there's things like Clare's Law. So yeah. Anyway, I've been talking for too long. Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Oh well, at least we've got Clare's Law. I mean, gosh. Ugh.
Clare's Law, and if you phone up, you're in a dangerous situation and you phone up 999 and you can't speak, if you press 55, the police will work out where you are and they can get to you, and they'll know that you can't speak because you're in immediate danger there. Also, some chemists now in Britain, you can go and you can they'll have a thing in the window saying "Ask Angie." So if you're in danger, you can go in and ask for Angie, and there's a bit where you can use the phone and you can get some help. I think Boots Chemists are doing that. And also pubs when they're open. There's Ask Angela in pubs in Britain. So any pub that's got the Ask Angela thing, you can go to the bar and you can say, "Oh, is Angela in?" And then the bar staff will know you need help. So there's different ways that women can get help now. And it's improving all the time, I'm glad to say. So, plus the domestic violence bill has been going through Parliament.
Oh, has it? What's that about?
So that's reviewing the the whole situation with domestic abuse. Can I just peel off a minute? A second, I won't be able to take.
Yeah, sure.
Hello? Oh, hi. You all right? Yeah, right at the top here.
We'll do this now and then probably come back tomorrow and finish it.
All right, is it going to be dead noisy?
No.
All right. Hi, I'm back. It's the workman's here.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll finish up anyway because we don't want to make it too long for everybody. And if you send that over to me, then I'll hang it on YouTube and hopefully help some people.
Okay, I will do my utmost.
And great show today. Different time, but different time. But
Yeah, it's been interesting. I'll find out more about what's being said about the domestic abuse bill. I think basically they were just going through every single aspect of it and modernising it, because I think within the law there is still some really ridiculous things still in the law that just need clearing out. So and new things putting in place to sort of like reflect modern society in Britain.
yeah.
So okay, it's been a great show. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks ever so much for coming on, and thanks to me, and thanks to the listeners, and see everyone next week.
All right. Thanks, Christine. Goodbye.
Very much. Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
listeners. Bye.